Welcome back to the series of lectures on the computer programming and computational techniques. In this class, we will focus on the module 3. The module 3 is all about the functions. So, in this module, we will learn the user defined functions, the arguments, return values, call by value, call by reference, functions, calling functions, functions and arrays, global variables, automatic, static and register variables, and the recursive function. We will get into this. As an introduction, the function plays a very important role in the C++ programming. Is basically dividing the program into functions, and this is one of the major principles of top-down approach. So in simple words, if you have a series of tasks, suppose you want to do addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. You are dividing all the individual addition, subtraction works into different functions, and you will be having a common function like calculation. So whenever required from the calculation, it will go to the addition and perform the task, or when it is required for subtraction, it will go to the corresponding tab. So it's basically a structured arrangement of functions or division of a main work into so many sub-works. In programming, the function refers to a segment that groups code to perform a specified task. Depending on whether a function is predefined or created by the programmer, there are two types of function. One is the library function, and the second one is user defined function. It's very clear. There are some functions which is already inbuilt in the C++, like if you want to know the square root of a number or sign of some value. So for all those things, there are functions already made in C++. You have just use this command to execute the function. So these are called a library function. They are the built-in function in C++ programming. The programmer can use library function by invoking the function directly. Invoking means calling the function directly. They don't need to write it themselves. Like we don't want to code for a square root or for to find the sign value of any value. There are so many examples like this. So these are called as the library function. Suppose something is created by the user for his own requirement. It is called as the user defined function. So let's see the general syntax of an user defined function. Just like this, you have a hash include input output stream, you have a void function name and a set of commands, then you have the integer main commands. We'll see in detail. Sorry. Yeah. So suppose think this problem as to find or it's a like a calculator program. You want to do subtraction, addition, multiplication and the division. Okay, so all the main tags, that means addition, subtraction, multiplication and division, will be there inside the main program, and we'll be having the what is addition listed as a separate function. Similarly, subtraction as separate function, the multiplication and division as separate function. So whenever it's required, the control from the inside that tagline, inside the main function will go to the corresponding one. It will execute in that function. It will come back to the original function. This is a general way of performing the task. So let's see in detail. When a program begins running, suppose you are doing this program, it's having only a single, the main function is there, a sub function is there. When a program begins running, the system calls the main function. So whatever or how much even there are numerous functions inside this inside this program, the main function, the one with integer main will be executed first. It's the first important thing to note. Whenever a program begins running, the system calls the main function. That is, the system starts executing codes from the main function. So, when you have this, suppose say this only syntax. Suppose that this program is given to the computer compiler. In the after reading the include IO stream namespace std everything, the control will come to here integer main. It will start executing. Then the function name is there, which is confusing. So this will jump to this function. This is a sub function which defines what is the function name. So when after executing the main function, the control of the program reaches the main function or the function name inside the main, and it moves to the void function name, and all the codes inside the void function name is executed. So everything under this function will be executed. Then control of the program moves back to the main function where the code after the call to the function name is executed as shown in figure below. After the result will come from the sub function to the main function and will be displayed. So this is basically a breaking up of a big task into smaller task. This will be very useful for the user or a learner to understand the various process or various coding inside the main program. We'll see an example. So just again explain, this will be the first one to execute integer main. After integer main, this when this function name is coming, the control will go to the sub function. Then the value will return to this function, main function. So it happens, and we'll see a problem. We have the hash include input output string using namespace std, and you have the functions here. So there are some important things to note which I have mentioned in the right hand side. Yeah, so the main things to note include, yeah, you have hash include input output string using namespace std, integer add. So you are defining an integer value called add, which is having two values, integer 1, integer 2. Okay, and there is some integer main, the main function integer number. So as I told, you think that the first when the compiler is reading this C++ program, the control after reading the header files, the control will come to the integer main. Very clear. So integer main, integer number 1, number 2, sum. So it defines inside the main program that number 1, number 2 and sum will be in the integer data type. Cout, enter two numbers to add. So this will be printed out. Cin, number 1, number 2. So the monitor will ask you to enter the value number 1, number 2. And then comes the function code. It defines as a sum. We already defined sum here, so there is no problem in that. Sum is equal to add of number 1, number 2. So one thing to note here is that when defining add here, there is nothing inside the main program which tells what is add. Okay, so it is must that you should define the add well before. Either you should define the add inside this main program or outside the main program. So here already it is defined outside. Okay. So we have add number one, number two. So this is an unknown function. So the add command will search for the sub functions here. The control will jump to the sub function. So you can see here integer main. This main program starts with this curly bracket to this curly bracket. So this is under the main function. This is basically a sub function. So this from here the control. So the arrow marks will show you clearly the order. First one to execute. The main function will be executing. When it comes to the sum add, the control will jump from here to the sub function. So the sub function integer add integer a integer b, that means integer add defined here, add is equal to a plus b. So whatever two variables are coming, a plus b, a and b, and the addition will be a plus b, the return add. So this value will be coming back to the main function. So the sum is equal to add. So this value will be printing out as a cout sum. This is a general step. There are some more guidelines to follow. That is this is very important because this entire module is based on the function. Function prototype declaration. So this is the function prototype declaration. That means something which is declared outside all the programs, which is common for all. In C++, function prototype is a declaration of function without its body to give the compiler information about the user-defined function. So by defining integer add bracket integer comma integer, this tells the compiler that there is an user-defined function in the entire program with this title. Okay, you can see that there is no body function. So no body of function prototype. There is no body. Just only a definition is there. Also, they are only written type of arguments, but no arguments. That means they just return the value. This performing after the performing sub function. It's only return function to the main function. The value will be returned to the main function. It is not necessary to define prototype if user defined function is existing before the main function. So when you classify this entire program into a function prototype declaration, the main function, then the sub function, we need to declare the function prototype only if the main function comes before the sub function. Suppose we are defining this sub function before the main function, we don't need this function prototype. It's very clear because already the computer will know that there is a user function well before. Okay, that's here told in this last sentence. It's not necessary to define prototype if the user defined function exists before the main function. This is a user defined function because user is defining that add is equal to a plus b. So this is the function prototype we were discussing. So I told this forward slashes won't be read by the compiler. This is just to information for the user. So this is the function prototype. Then function code we have. This is a function code inside the main program so that the control will go to the user defined function. To execute the codes of the function body, the user-defined function need to be invoked or called. In the above program, add number one, number two. This is the inside the main function calls the user-defined function. So this syntax calls the user-defined function. Inside the main function calls the user-defined function. The function returns an integer which is stored in the variable add. So after performing the task in the user-defined function, this function will return the value stored in the add. The function definition is referred as the function definition. So this user-defined function is called as the function definition. Okay, we will stop for today.